Hello! Once again, it's time for crafting with pink foam. This series is going to involve your rocky desert terrain. That's right. Because sometimes you need to set your game, whether it's a fantasy game, a sci-fi, post-apocalyptic, whatever, you want to set it in a warmer climate. And that rocky desert terrain is going to be what we're focusing on. So, once again, the medium is pink foam, and pre-textured this with hot wire foam factory. But I'm going to tell you, as I've said before, if you don't have your own hot wire and you don't want to go get it, just use a knife, rough cut the shape that you want, and then peel away with it until it gets the desired effect. And you could peel with a knife, you could peel with your fingernail. Pink foam is a great thing to work with. In fact, I'm going to show you this chunk right there. Can you see that? That is my own doing. That's me picking the pink foam apart with my thumb, and it made this cool kind of natural outcropping. And I could even go ballistic and do more. But what I'm going to start with, before we even get into the painting, is texturizing the top. Now you might remember if you watched the rocky mountainous crag and cliff terrain, or the Arctic snowy icy tundra terrain, that I did not texturize the top, but I want to do that today just to see what happens. So, couple things. You could texturize with stone, an actual chunk of rock. And I actually have found that the best texturizing method, if you're going to go with the rocks, are to find something that is really varied in its shape. Don't use a smooth like river stone. Actually, a chunk of broken concrete, like if you could find a chunk of sidewalk around your neighborhood, that's actually a great hard texturizer. But there's also a technique for texturizing in a softer, more subtle way, and that involves aluminum foil. So what I'm going to do is crumple up this aluminum foil and get it to be as kind of irregular as I can. I'm not making a baseball with it, so I'm just going to crumple it up, right? And I like it to have different protrusions. Okay, I like it to be kind of hard enough to have different protrusions. And what I'm going to do is roll this very hard. I'm kind of pressing it really hard. I'm going to roll it around in different directions, up, down, left, right, diagonal. And what that's going to do on the foam is create a texture. But it's not going to make it so textured that your minis won't stand up on it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just keep doing this on this one. And again, this is just like, you know, like many of the other crafting channels. You've probably seen DM Scotty or Jeremy over at Black Magic Craft do this, or Wylock, or John Susky, or the Crafting Muse, any of my friends in the crafting community. And I'm going big here with this ball because this isn't just some little square of, you know, foam core. We're doing big chunks of pink foam. And the pink foam is a lot more resilient. So instead of just rolling too, occasionally I'll actually push like really hard. Like I'm using a fair amount of pressure to create these depressions. I don't want to make like a crater, but I definitely want to give this enough character. Look at all my paints just dropping everywhere. I definitely want to give this enough character. You know, now if I were making short, abbreviated crafting videos, I would edit this part out. But I want you to see, part of the reason why I started this series is so you understand the whole process. Yeah, so here, I'm just going to finish this one up, and then I'll hold it up to the camera for y'all to see. So that, can you see that detail there, Dave? That is the kind of detail that we're talking about. It texturizes, but it doesn't really puncture. Now, if I want to just beat this up, you can hear how hard I'm hitting that. Okay, I could still beat it up because pink foam's really resilient. And now I've given it some deeper kind of chunks. Okay, so I really like that. And I want to do that because by painting in the layers that I'll be working with, I want to have a lot of texture, a lot of variation. So one of the things that I did is I kind of looked online at desert rock formations and just desert stuff. And to be quite honest, there's such a huge variety that it's not like there's just one type of thing that you can do. This side texture that I have really is not representative of most desert terrain, most rocky desert outcroppings. Most of the things you see in desert have more like striations, I think is the word, more layers, you know, on the sides. So if I wanted to, and this may be something that you experiment with, who knows? I could maybe take a fork and run it across the sides of this, or a knife and kind of make a striation line here and then another one above it, and just run counter to the grain here and see what that gives me. And I yet may do that. So, but this one is definitely kind of the top. In terms of the top, I like that subtle texturization because now the paint will really kind of soak into these pieces, and as the layers come through, we'll have a little more variety. So I'm gonna go ahead and keep doing that with all these pieces because I dig it. And stay around and join me, won't you? So one thing that I've been thinking about in the world of crafting, as I've been doing these working with pink foam videos, is, you know, a lot of the other crafting channels, like pink foam is their entire jam, like it's the majority of what they work with. And I think if I were going to, you know, start at the beginning, I would probably invest in something like a hot wire foam cutter, you know, and Jeremy's videos over at Black Magic Craft certainly would give you enough guidance for how to do all this kind of stuff. But at the same time, one of the things that really drew me into the craft was economy. It was cost. So, you know, after spending a lot of money backing a Dwarven Forge Kickstarter, I realized that I could not continue investing in terrain at that rate. Some people can. God bless you if you can. I can't. So really long story short is, you know, I learned to kind of be frugal, and I looked for recycling and garbage picking things that I could kind of use. And I like that frugal, recycled crafting approach. And of course, you know, one of the godfathers of that technique is DM Scotty. And also DMG, if you haven't checked out DMG info, they use a lot of, you know, just random recycled crap, plastic bits and cardboard and all that kind of stuff. So you can make some really cool terrain with just recycled stuff. The thing I like about pink foam is that it's a bridge. It's not an expensive material. It's super light. It's very durable. It can take a beating. I mean, and it looks great. It looks great. So, you know, if you're thinking about it, if you're like, oh, I dig these, you know, pink foam crafting videos. I mean, obviously watch everything that I make and subscribe and hit the notifications bell. But, you know, go check out like Black Magic Craft and some of the other guys in the crafting community who use pink foam, you know, very extensively, way more than I do, because they have builds for other things other than just scatter terrain. John Susky over at Dungeons and Glue Sticks is another one who, you know, this guy makes elaborate builds with pink foam, primarily. And he'll do cathedrals and temples and castles and, you know, giant 4-story inns and guard towers and just all these amazing things. It's like, it's literally like architectural. That's how precise his work is. So, you know, the sky's the limit. I mean, you could do sewer tiles, you could do buildings, you could do, you know, even small accessories. Sometimes people, you know, they'll build like a wooden gallows, you know, or a signpost, you know, or like a bulletin board for like wanted posters. All those little accessories for terrain and mini stuff, you know, are really cool as well. So here I am just beating the crap out of some pink foam. And this is a really small piece, but I did a variety of pieces for the desert terrain because I wanted to see, oh, that's cool. Here's a great example of how crafting is awesome. Just on accident, because I was talking and wasn't paying attention, I started to texturize the side here, and I love it. It's cool. I'm gonna do that more. Look at that. So I'm kind of getting away from the wavy lines that I did with the hot wire. And I'm not even texturizing the whole thing. I'm just beating it up a little bit. Oh man, that might be the way to go. That might be the way to go. All right, let me go to a medium-sized piece here. Just roll that along there. And here's the other thing I was mentioning about pink foam before I interrupted myself, is that pink foam kind of bounces back a little bit. So that's why don't be afraid to just beat it up a little bit, Okay, so I am just rolling this across the sides here, and it still maintains the cuts that I did with the pink foam, but it has like these cool striations now. It's almost like a layered bit. I like that. I feel like I'm gonna do that with more. Let's see. Let's see, this one's pretty, but I'm gonna just jack it up a little bit and see what happens. Kind of variety of little pressure there. Some pieces I'm just barely rolling it on, and others I'm just pushing really hard to the point where it almost might break. And you know what, if it breaks, that's okay. Crafting. Because breaking it is okay, because you can salvage it. There's nothing you can do that won't work in crafting. Oh, I'm digging deep now, man. I'm actually kind of working up a sweat doing this. I'm not lying. You're live with me right now, and that looks cool. That looks cool. I like that. Man, I like that. Now I got to go and do it for all of them because that's cool. See, that's an example. If I didn't just randomly make that mistake, I wouldn't have discovered this coolness. And now I dig it. Oh, so much. It's kind of hard to do with this giant wad of aluminum foil, but it's really cool. It adds such another layer of texture. So here's a tip I was thinking about the other day. A lot of times when people start off crafting, their first few crafts are very flat. And by flat, I mean like either they don't have a lot of texture or the painting is literally like one color, They go to paint a rock and they just paint it gray. And that's a common like beginner mistake. And the way around that is you got to remember that, layers and texture can be achieved with paint, but also literally with the material that you're using. So in this case, I'm just texturizing my ends here. And again, not every inch of it. I'm just kind of jumping around, but that line almost gives it a sedimentary rock kind of look. I dig it. Here, another thing. If I really just wanted to go all out with this, and some of you may know this already, I could put white PVA glue on this, and I could sprinkle some construction sand, which is kind of an aggregate. It's a mix of like little rocks and sand. It's got a variety of grit, and let that dry, and then paint that in, and that'll give it more of a kind of a rocky texture as well. I could do that, and I've done that before. You may, if you follow my channel and you have watched any of the crafting videos on my channel, you would know that I've done that a fair amount with my ruins. I've done it with my caverns and cave tiles, and it just adds kind of a cool feature to it. Here's my big paper for painting, and it just keeps slipping, so I'm just gonna get rid of it for right now. Yeah. So what prompted me to start making these longer form videos? Well, part of it actually was just on a fluke, because I was like, we need to test out doing live streaming on Twitch. So we needed to test out doing live streaming on Twitch. But then I was like, you know what? It's kind of cool, banging this up. It's kind of cool to see some variety, you know what I mean? Like, and to sit through an entire process. And then to top it all off, I was at home with my kids watching Netflix, and I saw Bob Ross on Netflix, and then I was like, what if I just did happy little crafting videos and painting videos? Wouldn't that be great? All right, so I want to show you something on this close-up camera. I screwed up. See it? I actually punctured the pink foam. I went too deep. So either I wallow in my sadness or I fix it. So I'm going to fix it. I'm going to pull a key out of my pocket. I don't have a lot of keys. I have one for my house and one for my car. And then I also have Gandalf. He's been with me for like 6 years. See him? My kids got him for me. Lego Gandalf. I'm going to cut this out with my key. Pink foam is messy, people. And messy is good. Now, you might be thinking like, well, Bill, it's easy for you because you know how to fix things. Let me tell you, guy or lady or person, whoever's watching, I literally have never done what I'm just showing you to do. I have never used a key to texturize or fix pink foam. First time. And I'm showing you now because we're discovering this together. We're exploring and learning crafting together. And the rule of crafting is don't be afraid to screw up because sometimes the most magical things happen when you screw up. Now cut back to that camera. Tell me that this isn't really cool. I think it's cool. It's like a whole nother layer. I almost want to go around and key all my pink foam. No, that's crazy, Bill. Don't do that. That's absolutely insane. Don't do that. But it's kind of cool, though. It's really cool. But it would be so time consuming to go back and do that to everything. Yeah, but it would be cool. Do it. Do it. Do it. All right, fine, inner me. I'm going to key this whole damn thing. Here we go. I might just be losing my mind, but I'm going to key it. Maybe this is the striations. Oh, I'm going to need a shop vac. Look at this mess. This brings me back to when I was working at Madly Effects with Brian and Heather on that big set piece. And just pink foam everywhere. Okay, so why am I using a key and not a precise knife? Because a precise knife would make a precise cut, but it wouldn't do that. Oh my God. This is the coolest thing that I've ever made. And we literally, this is real, people. Like I didn't plan this out. I didn't plan this out. This just happened. All I was going to do is come out and roll aluminum foil balls on my pink foam and then paint it. But I screwed up. And in the screwing up, I discovered this amazingness. I don't know if any of the other pink foam crafters have ever done this. This might be a video first on the crafting community of how to texturize your striated rock using a key and why it's good. I have a feeling that today we're making crafting history, friends. Crafting history. Now, I don't know if it's realistic. I don't know if rocks have this formation. Maybe there's a geologist out there or just a fan of geology, but I don't care. I don't care if this is realistic or not. It looks dope. And I'm just going to keep chipping away with my key and making these very messy cuts to my pink foam. Oh my God, it's so cool. It is so cool. Dave, we're going to need a shop vac. This is incredible. Dave's like, you're going to need a shop vac. I'm not cleaning all that crap up. Maybe we'll make O'Malley do it. All right, people, this is a new level of amazing. This is a new level of amazing. I love it. I absolutely love it. It's like a ledge, like a weird, I just love it. Do I do it to all of them? Should I go back and do this to all of them or no? You know what? Here's the thing. Here's what I'm going to do. First of all, doing it to all of them might be messy. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to do this one. And then all the others will just have the basic texturized. Oh, I forgot to roll this guy. All the others will just have the basic texturized plan that I was going with. And then we'll paint them up. And then we'll see if it's dope. And then we'll see if it's dope. And then if it's dope, I'll just get more pink foam and make more of these. And then we'll paint those. And then we'll have a 4x8 table full of desert, rocky, scatter terrain. But for now, I'm going to leave this dude alone because he's special. And this, Okay, so I'm beating up the top, and now I'm gonna roll, roll, roll. And man, I'm pushing hard. This is like a workout. Roll, 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 roll. Now this is a big piece. I got ideas for this piece. Actually, I don't. Truth be told, I have no ideas whatsoever. I just saw it and I was like, this is huge. And I could do like a whole cliff outcropping with it. So yeah, but all of this is scrap foam. And you could go about, you can go out and buy like a whole 4x8 sheet. It'll last you forever. But this is all just scrap. Now you can get scrap foam if you're crafty. Just be careful. If you dumpster dive, make sure it's legal. Don't piss anybody off. Don't get arrested by the police for trespassing or anything like that. Sometimes you just ask. Like I've gone up to construction sites and just been like, hey man, you mind if I snake a couple of those chunks of pink foam? And they're like, go ahead, that's just garbage. I'm like, thanks, brother. If it's garbage, it's garbage. So now I'm just beating up the side of this. And by the way, this is 2-inch pink foam. No, maybe this is the 1.5 inch. I don't know. So there's different thicknesses. So you can get pink foam in 2-inch, 1.5 inch, and I think even 1/2 inch if you really want to go thin. All right, now I have just a complete mess, which I have to clean up because you don't want to paint on a messy surface. So we're going to take a quick break. I'm going to find our shop vac and vacuum all this crap up. And then when I come back, we're going to start base coating these babies. Stick around.
Hey neighbors, the handyman here with Initiative Coffee Company, and I wanted to take some time to send you an invite to check out our whole bean launch roast, Improved Initiative, available at our website, initiativecoffeeco.com. Are you struggling to act in the morning? Seems like your enemies are always beating you to the punch? Start your day with our launch medium roast Improved Initiative at Initiative Coffee Company. In addition, we have a lot planned for the next few months, including our forthcoming blonde roast, Fulgurite. Straight from the glass shores itself, Fulgurite is so smooth, it's shocking.
Okay, welcome back. It's time to get down to the nitty-gritty. I'm here with my former student and friend, Natter. And Natter, while I'm painting terrain and explaining to my audience how that works, we're also going to talk a little bit about writing, because that's something that you're going to be doing now. So, all right, so Natter, you are interested in writing for the screen.
Yes.
All right, so tell me a little bit about what you've started doing.
So I've started right now, I'm in the process of writing a half-hour sitcom, right?
A half-hour sitcom, people. That means it's got to be funny. Okay, continue.
What I'm in the process of writing, it's about 10 pages in. It's kind of like fresh off the boat. Everybody Hates Chris, where there's the main character's kind of adult voice narrating the story as everything goes on, talking about his family and his kind of life and that whole process.
Nice. Okay. So, Natter, this is Burnt Umber. It's made by Apple Barrel. It's a dark brown. So what I'm going to do with this first piece is I'm going to blob this out. Because basically, people, what we're doing today is using up old paints. So I have a bunch of old crappy paint, and I'm going to use it up while I'm talking to Natter about writing. Isn't that a satisfying sound, Natter? Just a kind of sound. Now, the other thing I want to do, this is all desert terrain, Natter.
It's all desert.
Yeah, so it needs to be kind of colorful. So I start dark, and I'm going to mix in some red with this brown. And then my wet paintbrush, I'm going to kind of blob this around. Yeah, look at that. It's kind of a reddish brown now. And then I'm just going to start kind of slathering this in along the side and filling in all the cracks. So, Natter, while I'm doing this, let's talk about what have you been doing thus far to prepare? You mentioned before that you did some master classes. What are the master classes all about?
So master classes are kind of online classes taught by well-known professionals in kind of like the field that you want to study in. Like for example, I took a class by Ron Howard.
Ron Howard, the famous director, Ron Howard. Yes. Continue.
He taught a directing class, right? As well as Martin Scorsese. who taught a writing class. I
Okay.
started taking those. I kind of mentally prepared myself for that.
That's great. And you know what? I've actually, now that you mention it, I have seen like YouTube commercials before videos for master classes, and I've always wondered what that would be like. And I figured because they're called master classes that they would be pretty masterful.
Yeah.
So what do you feel like you got out of each of those classes?
Because the classes basically, they're pretty hands-on even, which is kind of surprising, right? They have a handbook, right? And they have lessons and homework for each individual class. Like for example, the Ron Howard one, I believe is, I want to say 30 videos. Right?
Wow.
Yeah, for each.
I'm thinking this is just one video.
No.
You're talking about a lot of stuff.
Each one is like maybe 10 minutes.
Okay. So they break it down, they break down the process into
Yeah.
kind of chunks, and then you said you have a book to go along with it?
Yeah, there's like a book with homework and kind of overviews and everything, and like they go through things like scene deconstructions and kind of like breaking down the plot of movies and everything like that.
Nice.
It's kind of like it's very interesting.
I dig it, man.
You know, I got your, if you need an account, I got you.
Okay. You know what, I think that might be one of my life goals is to take some master classes, but eventually teach some master classes. But I must achieve mastery first. Mastery first. All right, so Natter, let's talk writing. So you did the Scorsese master class. What do you feel you learned about the writing process in that master class? And before you explain that though, I just want to say, I added more paint to the mix, people, and it's not the same paint, but that's okay, because this is the base coat. So this has a little more red and some lighter brown in it too. And remember the golden rule of painting and crafting, that, you know, if you screw up, it's okay. You just do another layer of paint and everything will sort itself out. Okay, so let's talk about what you got out of the writing master class with Scorsese.
So writing the writing masterclass, it kind of broke down like the process of writing. Like it told you like what you need in basic story. It gave me some recommendations for books, right? Like Aristotle's Poetics.
Okay. Oh wow, they're digging deep for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And kind of went through that whole process, and it was a little bit of upliftment as well too. Like he talked about how getting past writer's block and what he does to get over that, and just a whole bunch of kind of like lessons that like he's learned along the way.
Maybe inspirational lessons. Well, you know what? If you're going to be inspired, it's nice to be inspired by people who know their material. Like, and that, you know, I mean, Scorsese, Ron Howard, those are heavy hitters in the world of media. So this looks like a giant log of chocolate right now. Isn't that kind of funny? I'm done with this. It's got to dry, so I'm just going to move it over to that side. And while we're moving on to this next one, Natter, tell me about, you had referenced in the very beginning that you were interested in writing and had started writing a sitcom. What draws you to sitcom? Like, why would you want to do that versus maybe, I don't know, like a more serious tone, something with, you know, drama or whatever? What's your inspiration for sitcom?
I mean, I like how in sitcoms, like the jokes, obviously, it draws people's attention. It kind of, it like humors people, right? It makes people smile. It makes people focus. And it's like really light as well. But comedies and like kind of sitcoms, they have the potential to also make very heavy points as well.
Yeah.
So it's generally light with like specks of heavy in it.
Okay.
Which I really like, and I kind of base my own life off of, right?
So yeah, because I think there's, you know, a lot of people look at sitcoms and they're, you know, they could be predictable or whatever, but I think sometimes the best sitcoms are one that have, I don't know, maybe some challenging drama, but then in the end there's a silver lining or there's something funny about it. So I get what you're saying with that. What are some influences? Like, so what are some shows or sitcoms that you feel like you're drawn to, or that you appreciate the style of, or that you consider an influence? You mentioned Everybody
Yeah, Everybody
likes
Hates
Chris, or Everybody Hates Chris.
Yeah, that was a show that I drawn heavy influences on, as well as Fresh Off the Boat.
I don't know Fresh Off the Boat. Tell me about it.
So Fresh Off the Boat is about a family of Asian Americans.
Okay.
Yeah, and then they used to live in Washington, D.C.,
Mm-hmm.
but moved to Orlando, so they're basically starting their lives fresh
Okay.
in Florida. And this kind of going through that process with like a mother who doesn't really speak English, and a dad who's trying to like get his business going.
I feel you.
So it's kind of that process. And they have like 3 kids. One's just starting high school, and he's the oldest, and then all the younger kids.
So is there a main character in that, or is the whole family kind of main character? Like in Everybody Hates Chris, it's obviously Chris, but it's also his family, but he's the main character. What would you feel is like the focus, character focus of Fresh Off the Boat?
So obviously the entire family is the main character, but the main character, Eddie, he's kind of like the focal point, right? And you notice that because throughout the series, Eddie as an adult kind of voices over the show, kind of explains what's going on in his thought process and kind of the situations that they're in.
Okay. So typically writers draw from, they write what they know, right? And a lot of times you hear that in classes, write what you know. What do you know and why would you know it? Like, are you drawing from this from your own familial experiences or growing up, or what? Obviously there's some connection. What is that connection for you?
Yeah, so what I'm writing is kind of based off my own experiences, being in an immigrant Arab family, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm in the process of writing about is kind of like Fresh Off the Boat, except they're immigrating entirely from a different country.
Okay.
Right.
So, and what's funny, most people wouldn't realize this, but if you look at a wide shot and you look at me and then you look at Nader, you'd probably never believe that I am half Arab, but I am. I just have all the fair-skinned side, Nader. I just don't tan. I just burn. But anyway, so I definitely get what you're saying, because I have uncles and aunts and grandparents and stuff that were fresh off the boat. And I mean, and it's for a lot of people, I don't want to say white people, but let's say not very ethnic people. The best analogy I often give is like My Big Fat Greek Wedding, that movie. Because to me, that even though they're Greek and I'm not Greek, but there's a lot of similarities culturally in terms of like family tradition and cultural traditions, and sometimes other things like food that some cultures take for granted, but they're a really big part of our culture. So, all right, continue on. So, what is it that you're working on now with your take on this that you consider to be the most challenging? So, in other words, you have some background because you're drawing from what you know, which is smart from a writing perspective. But what do you consider to be the most challenging component? So, where are you getting hung up?
Most challenging,
Yeah.
I would say, would be translating events or experiences that I've had into the actual kind of screenwriting format and into a format that's kind of set for television, right?
Okay. So when you think about that, do you think about the storytelling in a sort of non-linear way, like Everybody Hates Chris, where there's flashback components to it, or how do you perceive scenes coming together?
Yeah, so I'm kind of thinking of it along like flashbacks and kind of imagination kind of sequences. Like for example, another show that kind of inspires me is the show Scrubs, right?
Mm-hmm.
How often there are kind of imagination sequences where the main character kind of has a made up kind of story in his head that he just follows along. And
Okay.
It's just like sequences like that where I'm drawing off of it and I'm kind of explaining the background of like certain characters and why they think this way or why they're saying what they're saying.
Now, I think here's something that I think is interesting about how you're understanding that, or at least explaining it, and that is a lot of times in stories, it is hard to provide context for your audience that you know because you lived it, but your audience doesn't know. How do you do that? And a lot of, in the old days, it was kind of taboo to break the fourth wall. You know what I mean? It was kind of taboo to basically break character and explain to your audience the significance of another character or of a situation. But it's almost necessary, isn't it, with what you're writing, because your experiences may be familiar to you, but they might be very foreign to other people. And that's part of the charm of it, right? Yeah. So with these sequences, give me an example. Give me an example of a scenario or a scene in a show or an episode where you almost have to provide context for your audience, and you have this inner flashback or imaginary scene sequence that a character has. How would that work?
So for example, in my kind of screenplay that I'm writing, one of the main characters, they're kind of talking about how their dad kind of has this need to seek approval from his older brother, right? Mm-hmm. And
which is very typical of the culture, because if you're the little, so I'm the youngest of 7, so I grew up basically either annoying my older siblings or worshiping them or some mix therein. But yeah, I get that. So continue.
So he's explaining how his dad is always kind of seeking that attention and approval from him. So he's going through all these he's jumping through all these hoops and rings just to kind of get the point across, hey, look at me. But to any any common viewer, who watches it, they're going to be why is he doing all this to get the attention? But you don't really see, you kind of have to give that sort of backdrop of this is how the culture is. This is how, for example, the oldest brother is essentially parent part 2, especially if there's such a huge age difference between them.
Right. So give me an example. So so the main character's dad is doing something, and he's demonstrating how he needs the approval of his older brother. Give me a scenario. Is it in business? Is it in family? Is it buying a car? What's the scenario?
So he essentially isn't accepting any jobs unless he gets 100% approval from his older brother.
Okay.
And that's kind of a roadblock that him and his wife are trying to figure out, because his wife just wants him to get a job so that they can get money,
right?
Actually feed them and kind of sustain them. But he doesn't want to, step out of place or get kind of a side eye from his brother and risk disapproving him.
So is the older brother in the story successful? Is he a successful businessman, or what makes the younger brother, beyond just brother worship, what makes him need that approval?
Because their father was not very he wasn't really there in their life.
Yeah.
So he kind of looks to him almost as a father figure.
Yeah.
His brother's kind of a successful guy. He's a doctor, but clearly he has money. He knows what he's doing.
Right.
All that stuff, and he just wants kind of that acceptance from someone who's as successful and older, that he's kind of looked as a mentor, kind of father figure, whatever, to get that job too, so that he could see himself as just as successful.
What else? Tell us a little bit about that.
So some of the challenges that I wanted to kind of incorporate in this is kind of the losing of cultural identity, right?
Yes.
The adult or the oldest son who's starting college, right? He's constantly battling whether wear this or that, or kind of listen to this music, or kind of more culturally American music.
Right.
So he's kind of going through these internal and external battles, and who he hangs out with and everything, as well as kind of the middle sister, as well as the main character.
Oh, good. So there's a sister.
Yeah.
Because they have their own story arc too, lest we give people the idea that this is just boys.
Yeah.
Because the females have a whole another layer of pressure and battles and having to prove themselves too, right?
Yeah.
So Arab American women or Arab immigrant women have to, what's their chip? they don't necessarily have to be successful in their career, but what do they have to do?
Oh man. Well,
They have to have babies, Netter. And if they have sons, that's the most special thing, right?
yeah.
I don't know, but maybe that's an older generation thing. What I'm doing right now, by the way, Netter, is I'm stippling. So I'm taking paint off and I'm putting paint on at the same time. I'm adding little paint texture. So this brown stuff and red stuff, eventually it's gonna dry. And then once that base coat is dry, then I could start adding kind of more of these lighter colors. And what I'll do is, yeah, I'll add in little dry brushing of some orange and some yellow, and then a little lighter beige across the top for, you know, the sun-washed kind of sand look. But these are looking pretty good right now.
So what's the difference between wetting the brush and not wetting the brush? Like, what is that?
Okay, so wet brush means wet paint. And for a base coat, you want all the paint to get into all the cracks and all the crevices and all the little texture, right? So after it dries, then it'll soak into those little crevices and stuff. The next steps will be dry brushing. And dry brushing is where it doesn't actually mean your brush is dry. What it means is that your brush, your clean brush, will have some paint on it, but then you kind of wipe the paint off almost so that there's barely any paint on it, and then you gently brush across, and what that does is it highlights. So all the little edges get like a lighter color, a highlight, and that gives it more of a variety in color and texture and makes it look more realistic. But this has to dry before we do that. So Netter, do you want to share with people where they could find you on the webs if they want to follow you or support you, or are you?
Yeah, so I got a Twitter handle at the Wild Nostrich, THEWILDNANOSTRICH.
The Wild Nostrich. I like
All
that.
that.
Yeah.
I tweet some funny stuff. I retweet some funnier stuff. So
Yeah.
check it out.
Yeah. Well, it was good having you on our painting show for the desert rocky terrain. And we have to wait till this dries. So we're going to see you on the next part for the highlighting and the additional desert colors. Hey, hope you enjoyed that video. Make sure that you subscribe and don't forget to press the little bell icon so you get those notifications. And you know what? While you're at it, check out some of the other cool video content on the channel. I'm sure you'll have a blast.